Professor Hugh Possingham, welcome back.
Yes, it's interesting times we live in.
It is. We spoke just before COP26, and thank you very much for coming back to share your thoughts on how everything went in Glasgow.
Yes, a pleasure.
So, probably the first question is, the activist Greta Thunberg declared COP26 as a failure. Do you think it actually was?
If somebody told me I'm going to get 200 nations in a room to agree on anything, I would sort of be amazed. How could you get 200 people to agree on anything that's very complicated? So the fact that they come out with an agreement, and the agreement is some progress from previous agreements, to me is good. Clearly, it is definitely not enough. We know that with the current promises on the table, we're not going to get to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It's going to be more like 2.5. So, in some senses, a glass half full person could say, good, we'll meet again next year, hopefully we'll make more progress. Others would have been hoping for more.
Did you see the progress that you wanted to on nature-based solutions and climate adaptation action?
Yeah, on nature-based solutions, which is firstly a lot about stopping deforestation and doing reforestation, there was a promise by over 140 countries to do that by 2030. So that's good. The countries that control about 90% of the world's forests have agreed to stop chopping them down and start putting them back by 2030. From my perspective, because that's about 15% of global emissions, I think we should be able to go faster. Not chopping down forests is a win-win outcome for people and nature and equity and water quality and soil and biodiversity, let alone climate change. So these things, I think, could have been accelerated a bit faster.
There seem to be more organisations present at this COP and also more money on the table. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, business turned up and industries and companies turned up, and they've promised to do. In many ways, as we discussed last time, it isn't just up to governments to try and sort this out, and we do now see governments following behind the people and the industry. That's good. I mean, the world seems to be in debt to somebody. Most countries are in debt, and they're in debt to individuals and groups of individuals and big companies. So in some senses, they're the people who have the financial resources to solve these problems. So their promises, I think, are very meaningful and very important.
So the global conference and tourism sectors presented their pathway to net zero at COP26, and we're all trying to play our part. The conferences are interesting, aren't they? Because they generally involve air travel or some form of transport that needs fuel, but at the same time they're absolutely critical for innovators and researchers and scientists in terms of face-to-face interaction.
Yes, so the face-to-face interaction that goes on in science conferences, and I know because I've been to over 150 of them, and over 100 of them would have been overseas conferences, they've been critical to my career, that face-to-face contact. And certainly in these 2 years of COVID, I feel very sorry for my early career researchers, particularly those near the end of their PhDs and early in their postdoctoral careers, because it's exactly when they should be giving a presentation, wowing the audience and making those contacts and picking up their next career jobs. So many of the people I've appointed in faculty positions or postdoctoral positions, I've been impressed with because I've seen them face to face. And you don't get that same interaction over Zoom or Teams or all these other formats. So getting back to the conferences is very important. They need to build their networks. Of course, then there's the problem with the carbon emissions from travelling, particularly the flying side of travel, and that's a big part of Australia. But there are solutions. A solution that works now is offsetting by paying for the planting of trees and sequestering carbon. That actually can only work for so long. But the other solution is creating fuels out of things like algae. So there are already plants in the United States where they're growing airline grade fuel from algae, and the algae they have doesn't need good soil, it just needs nutrients and water, and those nutrients and water produce algae that are over 50% basically oil that can be burnt in aeroplanes.
So where to from here for the world and for Australia?
Well, importantly, although the job isn't fully done, they've agreed to meet again and work on these commitments, and so hopefully there'll be continuing progress through this decade. But to my mind, what we've also realised with all these industries and companies coming to these meetings like Glasgow, money's on the table. those industries see economic prosperity in decarbonising the economy. And necessity is the mother of invention. So I think a crisis like this that faces us, brings us together as a planet, and also makes us work almost on a war footing to solve the problem. And on a war footing, economies boom. So I see that once we've got over the initial shock, it's not a matter that climate change is going to cost us money. It's a matter that climate change is going to actually cause the economy to boom.
Hugh, it's been great to chat, and maybe we'll talk again next year when we do it all again.
Yes, it's been very enjoyable. Looking forward to discussing again next year.